本期视频是印度网红学者扎夫达6月17日最新油管直播的节选。扎夫达油管粉丝近100万，在印度网民中拥有很高的人气。他说，美国之所以能容忍石油美元协议的终止，其实是因为他们在下一盘很大的棋。说印度应该加快科技强军，向东大学习，既要质量也要数量。我们看看他是怎么说的吧。
Is the petrodollar deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States over? What are the implications? Yes, so the news came out recently, about a week ago or so, that the petrodollar deal that Saudi Arabia had signed with the US is now officially over. The Saudis have chosen not to revive or continue that agreement. And this agreement was signed in 1974 for the first time. And what was the agreement? The petrodollar agreement. The agreement was that Saudi Arabia would sell its petroleum only with the US dollar as the currency. It would only accept US dollars when it would sell petroleum. So this made the US dollar, it entrenched the US dollar and solidified the US dollar's position as the world's reserve currency and the main currency or only currency in which you could trade in petroleum. So that is something that allowed the US to establish its primacy, its supremacy, and so on worldwide in the 20th century. And now this is over. So the implications are that, first of all, what does it mean that this deal is over? And in exchange for the Saudis agreeing to use the US dollar only as a currency, the Americans gave them a lot of economic benefits, military aid. All Saudi Arabian army weapons, military weapons are US weapons, US made weapons, and so on. So the Saudis became a loyal, let's say, ally of the US, and they got lots of benefits in exchange for making the US dollar the only currency in which they would trade in oil. So that was the deal. Now that deal is over. So what does that mean? It means the Saudis will now sell petroleum, oil, and they will accept other currencies apart from the US dollar as well. So what currencies could these be? It could be the ruble, the Russian ruble, the Chinese yuan, the euro, possibly the Indian rupee, even currencies like Bitcoin, etc. could be accepted by the Saudis. So that is what it means. That's the immediate implications of that. And that obviously diminishes the value of the US dollar internationally, doesn't it? So does it mean that the US dollar is doomed? And does it mean that the US dollar's value will fall? Will it depreciate? What could happen? And why is the US seemingly okay with this? I mean, the US is the world's preeminent power, is the sole superpower. It has destroyed entire nations for less. So why is it okay with the Saudis going ahead with ending the petrodollar agreement? I get the feeling that this could be part of a script. There is a script, it seems like to me, that is being played out right now. And this could have something to do with technological advancements, the rise of artificial intelligence, AI, the rise of technologies like blockchain, the blockchain ledger, all that. When certain momentous changes happen technologically or geopolitically, you will see them either being there could be downstream effects, or there could be effects of that before it actually happens. For example, in 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell and the USSR eventually crumbled, a tremendous amount of geopolitical changes happened in those years. In the early 90s, late 80s, etc., new nations were formed and a lot of stuff happened. The Central Asian republics became independent. Yugoslavia was broken up, and lots of things happened. There were downstream effects in Africa as well. So with the advent of technologies like blockchain, with the US becoming the AI superpower, I believe that the US may be on the verge of soon, possibly, rolling out a digital dollar, a digital currency. And maybe the EU and all Western nations may participate in that. And that would obviously naturally be controlled from the US. So the US essentially will own and control this currency. That's what I think. And when this currency is rolled out, a digital currency, then you don't really need the US dollar. I mean, you can phase it out slowly. So I don't think the US will allow its supremacy, its primacy, global primacy and superpower status, and its currency status as the world's reserve currency to just slip away like that, especially at the hands of Saudi Arabia, which you could say is, whether you like it or not, it's a US vassal. It's been one since, well, the 20th century, the middle of the 20th century. So the Saudis, as I'm sure you will understand, will do nothing that will displease the US significantly. You may remember that when the Jamal Khashoggi incident happened, uh, the Americans in the West hounded and humiliated the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He was treated very, very poorly whenever he went to some G20 or whatever event. He was marginalized, he was sidelined, nobody would speak to him. Only Mr. Putin and Mr. Modi would speak to him, and so on. So the Saudis know full well what can happen, what will happen if they uh, challenge the US in any way whatsoever. Every nation knows that. No nation can stand up to the US today. The US can destroy entire nations like that. So I think this is part of a script. I think we're going to see a move to digital currencies, and those digital currencies, whether it's a basket of currencies or a single currency, will be controlled by the US, owned by the US. And maybe this is the beginning of that phase. So I don't think it poses a significant challenge to US to the US superpower status, to the US supremacy, etc. I think it's part of a script that's being played out right now. What's your take on the Indian Army getting Nag Astra 1, the indigenously made kamikaze drone? Some reports say that the army is planning to get 5,000 of these drones in the next 3 years. I think it's a good step. I'm glad to see this progress happening. The 21st century warfare is different compared to the 19th century warfare. We've seen how things are happening differently in the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict and also the Ukraine war. Obviously, the lessons of the Ukraine war have to be heeded. The battlefield environment, the battle space environment is very different today in the 21st century. All these new technologies coming in, and loitering munitions, suicide drones, kamikaze drones, whatever you want to call them, are a very important part of the new battlefield environment. So these drones are typically 10, 12, 15 kilograms in weight. Lightweight things. You can lift them with one hand. Okay, 10, 12 kilos. I think the Nag Astra 1 is about 12 kilos in weight, and the warhead it carries, or the ammunition it carries, would be about 3 to 4 kilos, maybe 3 kilos. So the explosive charge is basically just 2 or 3 kilos, 3 kilos maybe. So that, what does it do? It takes out individuals. It's an anti-personnel weapon, or maybe it can take out small vehicles as well. So I've not seen the details. I'm sure a 3 kilogram explosive charge can take out a small to medium vehicle, or at least cripple or disable it. For example, a personal carrier, a jeep, maybe even a tank if you hit it in the right spot, maybe at the top from the turret or whatever. So I'm glad this is happening. I believe this loitering drone, has an endurance of about 30 minutes. So 30 minutes it can fly, which is along the same lines as the various drones that are being used in the Ukraine conflict. So it's the same class of drone, and I'm sure it's been tested and now it's being inducted. I'm glad to see that. 5,000 in the next 3 years. Well, I think you should ramp up the numbers a bit, or maybe it's just the first iteration of a loitering drone, and I think it's being manufactured by a private company. So I hope many more such weapon systems are developed in India. And what I hope our planners and strategists understand is that we need large quantities of these things. So I can understand if the first iteration of this weapon, you only acquire 5,000 of these over the next 3 years. But once you have a fully robust, and you can say final system, that is the right thing you can take in a battlefield, then you need large quantities of that. Because if you have a war, let's say with whoever, let's say you have a two-front war. On the one hand, you have Pakistan. On the other hand, you have China, and Chinese occupied Tibet. Then to fight these two nations, you're gonna need lots and lots of these assets. So Overall, I would say great progress. I'm glad to see that India is not being left behind. We have tremendous engineers in India. We have lots of private companies that can do wonderful work. We should become a technological superpower. Forget about being a geopolitical superpower right now. Let's become a technological superpower, major power, drone manufacturing, and other stuff. And I think we are seeing steps being taken in that direction. So, overall, great job. And let's continue. Jitu Chetri says China says that it will build 1,000 J-20 fighter planes, Generation 5 fighter planes by 2035. While, see, quantity has a quality of its own, especially when the quality is good. So even if you have a MiG-21 class fighter, I'm not saying the MiG-21 itself, which is obsolete, very old, but something of that class, of that caliber, and you have 2,000 of those, it's a formidable challenge for any enemy. So quantity has a quality of its own. That's what Joseph Stalin said, and he was right. So the Chinese are doing the right thing. What about us? How many? 36 Rafales. 36 Rafales. And maybe 36 more in the next 10 years. What are we doing? We need to spend more of our GDP, our budget on the military. It is imperative we do that. And we need to boost the number of warheads we have. Those warheads, the spice warheads. We need 1,000 of those.